What is up, everybody? Solomon here. Super excited to be with Genfinity, interviewing a multitude of projects across Web3. Equally excited to be diving deep into the IC or Internet Computer ecosystem today. We have a multitude of projects. We're going to be talking to Personal DAO. We're going to be talking to Solutio. We're going to be talking about BitBasil. We're going to be talking to Kyle from Swap. We have Darren Moore up here with us today as well. Have to give a huge shout out to Kyle, who's probably going to be driving most of this conversation and who invited in all the guests for us today. And then stick around at the top of the next hour. We're going to be talking about borrowing and lending on Hedera. But Kyle, thank you so much for inviting everybody today. Looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate you guys letting me do this and help you out with this. So I know everyone here is getting pretty familiar with ICP. We have a lot of incredible builders. So why don't we kind of like go down the line, get some introductions, and then later on, I know I mentioned it to some of you. I don't know if I got to everyone just yet, but if at some point you might want to present your screen, we can get that up. It is an option, but why don't we go down the line from Jesse, and then Juan, Eric, and then Scott, and get this kind of rolling. So do your intro, what you're building real quick, and then we'll kind of get into some more in-depth conversation.
Cool. My name is Jesse Williams. I'm the founder and creator of Personal DAO, which is a turnkey DAO solution that functions as a private peer-to-peer lending institution for enterprises, corporations, communities, families, or individuals.
Sorry,
my name is Juan. Sorry.
Oh, no, you're good. I accidentally hit the wrong mute. So basically, Juan, yeah, go ahead.
Thanks for having me. My name is Juan. I'm builder and lead developer of Solutio, a platform that we are building with my friend and colleague, Eric, that in a bit we are going to tell you more about it.
Awesome. Go ahead, Eric.
Hey, I'm Eric. You guys might know me as Fairtail on Twitter. I'm the partner of Juan. I'm also one of the founders of Solutio. And yeah, like Juan said, there will be time to say everything about Solutio. We're building a decentralized ideation and crowdfunding platform.
Awesome. I appreciate it. And go ahead, Scott.
Hey guys, Scott, founder of BitBasil. We're building an Ordinals art marketplace on the Internet Computer.
Perfect. Yeah, I definitely love Ordinals. So glad to see that we have more marketplaces coming in. And yeah, Scott, I do know that you guys recently put art on the moon, if you want to kind of dive into that. And I do know that BitBasil is going to be gearing up to launch here fairly soon. So if you want to kind of go into that a little bit more.
Sure. I mean, it's super exciting. It's kind of like the pinnacle of everything we've been doing down here, based in Miami over the last 6 years, spearheading a lot of the blockchain ecosystem and really finding where we could put artists first to enter not just blockchain, but like different Web3 technologies, whether it's AI or augmented reality. Kind of putting the artists first is the thesis that we found out is the best way to adopt new technology. So last year, our community and our team was invited to be part of this awesome project called the Lunar Prize Museum. It's more relevant to us here in Florida because if those that don't know, Florida is kind of the space capital. Rocket launches to the ISS, to the moon happen, which is just east of Orlando. So for the first time since 1972, the US has gone back to the moon. And this time the US is partnering with the private sector. And you might know the company, it's called SpaceX. But there was a whole slew of companies that were part of this first mission, which is called the Artemis program. It's a 5-year program to send the US back to the moon. It used to be called the Apollo program back in the 70s. And the first mission for the Artemis program didn't send any people. That's happening in a few years, but it sent a lunar lander to the moon. And on that lander was the Lunar Prize Museum. It was one of a dozen payloads, but most of the payloads were for scientific research. This one was a museum. It was a disc made out of nickel And on that disc was printed using something called nanofish technology, 222 curated artist work. So, we had a lot of artists onboarded to that program. And what's really cool is that now that it is physical artwork on the moon is being turned into digital assets, ordinals specifically. And we're excited to launch, kind of them all on the internet computer.
Yeah, that's a massive project right there that you guys were able to accomplish. And, to have 221 artists, that's very impressive. And I know there's some stuff coming up later this summer regarding that. But I should probably get everyone kind of involved here where, since we are all based on IC, let's kind of go down the line and hear about like what kind of brought you in, like what was like the key identifier into your first like exploration into the internet computer. Why don't we start with Jesse?
Yeah, so like a lot of other people, what caught my eye was the launch, the ICP launch. It launched at like $700, and then it tanked for the next, I don't know, two and a half or 3 years. But so that's what got my attention. What kept my attention was the developer experience. I recognized the value in the technology that's here. I'm a believer in decentralization. So the democratization of the infrastructure that our world has come to rely on, this digital infrastructure that none of us can avoid if you want to actually participate in a real economy in 2024. You have to participate in a digital economy in some form of fashion or another. I'm aware of how centralization usually is a breeding ground for misuse and abuse of systems. And so being able to participate in an ecosystem that is taking our world's digital infrastructure, the physical servers that our data must be stored on, and they're usurping that custody that Amazon Web Services and Microsoft Azure and Google Cloud and CrowdStrike, all of these centralized server platforms, taking that custody that they've hoarded and returning it to the hands of the users so that we can no longer be exploited through exploits of our data. That was a vision that I subscribed to, and that's what kind of got me willing to commit to learning this technology stack and to contribute into this ecosystem in the form of trying to actually create value through the products that I'm building.
Just real quick, Jesse, I'm curious because you talk about leveraging technology to empower people, right? And
Yep.
leveraging decentralization to empower people. How far do you think we have to go as far as the technology is concerned to really get to that point? Obviously, there's a starting point with what's here right now. How do you kind of envision, when you think about personal DAO, it's like, I think about, custodianship of your own data and incentivization of your own data and the way that you interact with this technology, because right now that stuff just doesn't exist.
Yeah, I think, so how far do we have to go? How far are we now? I think we're still a very nascent ecosystem, right? We're still vulnerable and sensitive. The market cap is only about 6 billion. If somebody wanted to, commit a 51% attack, all they would need is about 3 or 4 billion. That's not to say that that's not a lot, but there are companies with incentives to destroy this ecosystem because it's a direct competitor to them, like AWS. So where are we now? We're still early. I think we're still at a place where we as the developers and the entrepreneurs, we can't get complacent. We can't feel like we've already made it. We have to, continue to be hungry and continue to sift through the feedback that the end users are giving us, be responsive to that, and actually create value. Meme tokens and artistic NFTs, those are really cool features of blockchain, and they do galvanize communities. But in order to create wealth, which is what this ecosystem needs if it's going to compete with AWS, with Microsoft and Google, in order to create wealth, we have to be productive. And so I think where we're still at a stage where we haven't bursted. We're not in the safe zone just yet. We're not out of the woods, but we do have a very promising start. Now, where we're going. So when you say that, I'm thinking 20 years from now, right? So the year 2044. I think at that time, there's other decentralized ecosystems are gonna emerge. Since competition is natural within any industry. But where do I think we're going? I think we're going to a place where the vast majority of compute happens in a decentralized fashion as opposed to a centralized fashion. And so with that being the case, we as an ecosystem, we have plenty of space for growth, which is where you want to be if you're going to dig your heels in and hit your ride to something. You want to attach yourself to something that has room for growth, as opposed to something that sits at the top already, is the incumbent and has nowhere to go but down. That's the case for Microsoft, Google, and Amazon. I think those companies within 20 or 30 years, their stature on the global stage is going to be largely diminished, thanks to the work that people within this ecosystem are doing. So that's where we're at, and that's where I see us going. How we get there largely depends on how responsible we are as an ecosystem, who we choose to support, how we choose to deliver constructive criticism, and kind of taking a step back from the tribalism that is within the crypto space. ICP, I'm getting long-winded. I'll wrap up with this. ICP succeeds if we enable other blockchains to succeed. So we can't have this tribalistic us versus them kind of attitude. We as a community, we have to come together and showcase the value that this ecosystem offers to other ecosystems. And the only way to do that is to put aside the tribalism, come together and each one teach one.
Yeah, and yeah, definitely agree with especially that last point. The tribalism in crypto is kind of overwhelming at times, and I want to give thanks to Genfinity, because if we didn't get along with them, we're not doing the space today, right? That's just the nature of it. That we have to build connections and really grow as community members of Web3, not just a specific ecosystem. So that goes from reaching out and building good, strong connections and understanding other projects and other ecosystems as well. So again, that's something that I've been pretty passionate about over the last couple of years. Is if ICP specifically wants to get to blockchain singularity, right? They don't get that from being hard-boned criticizing every other ecosystem. It's about building good connections and allowing and being open to other ecosystems having good parts that they can kind of collaborate and work together on. And I think, a lot of people would agree with that. That's the good way of building a strong core for Web3, and makes it more approachable for newcomers to come into the space. Not sure if you had anything else to chime in on there.
No, I mean, I looking through what you guys have with Solucio as well. Let me share my screen. I would love if you guys could touch base on this, because I think you bring up a really interesting point, Kyle, where, this industry is 100% built on ideas, fundamental ideas to change the status quo, disrupt the status quo, decentralize things like that. I think it's so important to get outside of the echo chamber sometimes to really ideate in the right ways, because if you're just listening to one single set of ideas that might be, promulgated from like one single ecosystem, it's hard to figure out ideas that are going to move the entire industry. So I would love if the Solutio guys could maybe touch base just a little bit on what you guys are building with, crowdfunding, crowd building, sharing ideas, splitting development costs, and really growing the pie together.
Yeah, sure. Maybe I can answer that. So you touch on exactly the points that we wanted to solve with Solutio, right? So I mean, we live in a world where much ideation and discussion happens on social media, and it has allowed every person in the world to have a voice. But social media doesn't really give people a way to act on their ideas, right? So in practice, what I mean is it doesn't matter how many likes your tweet gets. The chances that it will become an app or something are pretty slim, right? And for developers, there's the challenge on the other side, right? Do we really do we really remember every single feature request that we receive on Twitter? It's really hard to keep track of all of that. How many people actually asked for, a Super Bowl commercial or whatever? It's really hard to quantify that stuff. And so we built Solutio as an answer to that, right? So it's a place where anyone can share an idea, or actually it starts with the challenge, right? You first create a challenge, and then people can submit multiple ideas to how to best solve that challenge. And the great thing about that is that if someone doesn't like something, they don't have to FUD it. They can create a parallel idea next to it, and if it's better, it pulls the community over there. And I believe this generates much more positive interactions, right? But the end result of all of this is that all of these ideas compete. The community selects which ideas they like best. They can do this for free through simply liking or following the idea, or they can actually make a pledge in crypto, right? You can imagine that as it could even be a group of developers. They go on an idea on Solutio, they say, we really need this, right? And so then 10 projects could come together and fund something that they need, or the community, hundreds, thousands of users could go into an idea, share, pledge a few tokens to get that idea built. And if enough pledges come and it's enough money to attract the developer to say, you know what, I'm going to build that, the thing can be delivered. The great thing is that for companies that are, on social media, it gives them real quantifiable insight into what users are wanting and what they're asking for. And in many cases, it even gives them a reward to build what users are asking for. So it's basically getting paid for success, which I think is great for companies. And for users, right, the great thing is that instead of like...
Your mic is muted.
Oh, sorry about that. So different than, thank you. Different than on Twitter, where your tweet might get ignored or it just dies after a few days. The idea stays up, and if it gets built, you actually even earn a finder's fee for having shared that idea and shared it on Twitter, doing the whole outreach job. That's it in essence, right? Without talking too much.
It's like a purest form of capitalism, right? Everybody stakes coins and gets rewarded for the effort. So I'm really interested to see how this all plays out, like when there's mass adoption.
We are hoping that many projects on ICP embrace this as a feedback tool for their projects. Like I said, the users can use it for free at first, and when they really care about something, they can put some money in. And over time, I hope this can slowly become sort of a replacement for what we have as grants today. Maybe Dfinity hopefully someday also uses that, because as an investment company, what is better than a list of what are the most requested apps and features that the community currently wants? I mean, from my perspective at least, that's the best way to choose what grant gets approved or where to put in the money. So yeah, that's the long-term goal.
The community always gets upset about grants too, so it kind of takes liability away from the people that select grants.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting too, because you know, you see so many innovators out there in the space that are like just kind of building behind closed walls and then releasing products and being like, let's see what sticks. And you know, how many projects have we seen that do that? And then the actual usage of what they've built may be totally different than what is already out there in the wild. And then it's like, how hard is it to pivot after the fact whenever you've already released something into the wild? I think you guys brought up an interesting point earlier too, and I'm curious from the Bit Basil from Scott. I'm looking through. I'll share my screen here in a second. But obviously, you know, doing things through ordinals. So building on ICP, you know, having kind of the ordinal aspects of integration. So obviously, kind of delving out into what's kind of occurred within the Bitcoin ecosystem over, let's say, 2023 primarily is when all the ordinal stuff took off. What was the motivation behind something like that? I mean, because I didn't see, I guess I'll say it's interesting because if you look at the amount of capital that was put behind ordinals whenever it launched, it definitely stuck out to me, but I didn't see a lot of people taking stock of what was going on there.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. That is our link tree. I'm happy to give a little preview of this marketplace we have coming out, but
yeah,
you know, ordinals itself is a beautiful architecture, but just the thesis of being able to put art on the blockchain. We always had this idea of that Bitcoin was really this perfect permanence and provenance structure for especially kind of like the one of one art, you know, maybe not like the one of many's, but, you know, really if you want your art to stand a test of time, wouldn't you want to put that on Bitcoin? And, you know, I think people, you know, maybe they realize now with ordinals, but art on Bitcoin has been around for almost a decade. I mean, we started with Counterparty, right, back in the day with the rare Pepes on there. And then kind of with the scaling debates, you know, all this kind of creativity and not just NFTs, but all smart contract use cases moved to different blockchains, Ethereum. Bit Basil ourselves, you know, we've always kind of been focusing on this thesis. We were building on the Stacks blockchain, if you guys are familiar with that, which was a layer 2 onto Bitcoin. But then, you know, kind of ordinals popped out in case you released this on-chain way of kind of creating NFTs on Bitcoin using UTXOs and Satoshis. So it made perfect sense to us, but obviously the infrastructure was not there. So we wanted to build this, you know, art ecosystem on ordinals. And, you know, I've been familiar with the ICP, with the IC over the years, but haven't really delved too much in. But what people didn't know is that they were early leaders on kind of this Bitcoin layer 2 integrations. They had this CK-BTC canister built almost a year and a half ago. So they had some grants out, you know, kind of hitting on the ordinal wave and seeing how different companies could build ordinals on their technology. And that's kind of when we dove in, maybe almost 6 to 7 months ago, working with the team at Bionic as well, who's really innovating here. And we get the best of Bitcoin and we get to take out the worst of it. So our ordinals, you know, whether they're on chain, we're able to pull them onto the IC so we can have instant, with no gas fees transactions. A user can mint an artwork on our platform with a Gmail sign-in, and they don't have to hold crypto, and they could hold an artwork on their hand, which could be inscribed to an ordinal. So we love that about the IC, that it's so user-friendly, and it's also gigabrain technology. And not just Bitcoin, you know, they're coming out with integrations into Ethereum and Solana too. So I think someone was echoing this, you know, we really got to push that narrative of a singularity. I like that, Kyle, the blockchain singularity, or what, you know, I think what ICP is really pushing, like this chain fusion technology where the IC can really live as this, I don't want to call it a layer 0, but it's kind of a message, a protocol to communicate across different blockchains. And we're using it just because it's the right tech for us, but we really love the technology. And not just the technology, we've come to love the community as well.
I think just real quick, I mean, I always find it really interesting. Like we've got Jesse up here from Personal DAO, and I think of when we started using the term DAO, you know, and I think of when we started using the term NFTs, and most people don't realize like 2015, I think were the first NFTs. And I want to say it was through like colored coins, right? I think where they were called. But then you don't see really the takeoff of NFTs until what, like 2018 or so, maybe 2017, like CryptoKitties and all that stuff. But Same thing with DAO. I mean, we see it right now too. And I think it's really interesting when you think about something like ordinals, where you're writing data or you're inscribing directly on chain. And there's certainly a lot of use cases that we probably haven't even seen yet with something like inscriptions. But then you get into leveraging different stacks of technology and where ordinals may go in the future, like use ICP for X, Y, and Z. I think of, like I know on Hedera, they do inscriptions, and like I looked at some of the numbers, and it's like to inscribe 3.1 gigabytes of data directly onto Bitcoin, it was like in the millions of dollars. To do it on Hedera, it was like a couple grand. And I'm sure it's similar to the IC aspects as well. So going to be really cool to see how this stuff patchworks together.
I think it makes sense, leveraging it, different layers of scaling. I mean, the internet that we're on right now is different protocols, stacked on top of one another, TCP/IP, HTTP. So the fact that we have one blockchain that's just going to do everything in terms of moving money around and also hosting decentralized AI doesn't seem, it seems like there's different methods, and we like this layer of scaling where even layer 3s are coming out now, to really focus on the user perspective, because ultimately we wanted to make it easy for users as well.
Yeah, and it's been interesting to see like all of these projects, Bitbasil, Personal DAO, and Solucio kind of like come together for this. One thing that you kind of mentioned, Scott, as Bitcoin being like the highest tier, right? The largest market cap. One of the things that I kind of like put in together today for like a chart, I was comparing it to like the largest business market caps out there, right? And currently, if you're looking at Bitcoin, it's got a higher market cap than Facebook, which obviously we all know is a tech giant, right? And one of the things that really struck out with, being able to leverage Bitcoin and do ordinals and get art on there. And now you're kind of taking that, working with Bionic.
I lost Kyle there for a second.
Yeah, I think he brought up the internet connection. But we haven't gotten to Juan. Can you
but yeah, so just kind of like seeing.
Hey Kyle, you were gone for a second. Maybe go back. Yeah.
I think he's rocking.
Gone again.
Jen, you're muted.
Yeah, I told you guys this is going to be the Wild West doing these videos. This is the first one that we've done on here. Kyle, we lost you for a second, but I think we have you back.
Okay. Yeah. So I forget where I was at now.
Maybe the last thing you said was Bionic, but I know.
Oh, yeah. So like kind of
Milwaukee.
All right. So yeah, kind of like using Bionic because with your product, you're leveraging CKBTC, which allows for you to kind of speed up transactions and don't get the congestion of the mempool. Like, do you see that like being something that gets widely adopted in the next like year or so? Because like obviously you mentioned ICP launched CKBTC about 1.5 years ago. I believe what we've previously talked on. You're going to be at Nashville and kind of see like people recepting it more this year. How do you kind of see like that layout of the next year to 18 months for CKBTC, especially with your involvement in the art world? I think it'd be interesting to kind of hear your input on how this has been received on your side so far.
Yeah, Joe, just real quick. I mean, ordinals too, are like another example of art leading the way in terms of, pushing new technology. But that's just really like the tip of the iceberg, right? And you're talking about the market cap of Bitcoin, $1 trillion, $1.4 trillion ecosystem. And, it's when we start not only leveraging the NFT side of things, but also the DeFi side of things. And what Runes is doing, forget the meme coins, we love meme coins, not really, not my personal take, but just the idea of being able to leverage your Bitcoin in decentralized finance is going to unlock, a whole new pool of capital coming into this. And from the art world, like I said, we put them out front, but think about Bitcoin from an institutional perspective. It's a little bit more okay. as it has been a commodity for the last 6 years by the CFTC. So in terms of pools of capital that can come into Bitcoin from a decentralized finance perspective, that's probably the next wave that's gonna blast off.
I want to ask Jesse just real quick here too, because you think about where this space is going. And I keep going back towards like and even still right now, I find it super ironic that like we are talking about Web3 and blockchain, and this is streaming to the most platformification wise, like Web2 platforms possible, which is like Twitter, YouTube, things like that, where you can't see what's being sold. And if you can't see what's being sold, you and I are being sold. Our data, our actions, everything that we do is being sold right now. When you think about something like, putting the power back in the hands of the people and actually incentivizing people based on their actual like actions, like if I do X, Y, and Z, my choices have value to them. And it's not just value to these big platforms that are making billions of dollars based on, selling to me or making me do certain little things over time. I don't know if you guys have seen The Social Dilemma, but like you start tying that stuff into like AI and all sorts of other crap, like which is already going on. It's wild. So Jesse, I mean, I think it's kind of like a full circle thing here where, you think about our data provenance and the way that we use, the way that we interact with these like technologies over time, like how big of an opportunity it is to kind of disrupt the status quo with something like Personal DAO, and then even just the industry as a whole.
I think it's a huge opportunity. You got a lot of people who have experienced. So you mentioned that there's a lot going on Web2 platforms, and most of it's behind the scenes. That there's a latency period where yes, that's true, but over time, the abuse and the exploitation, um, and the I don't know, predatory behavior, not like the economically predatory behavior that these companies practice, it comes to light. It happens late. There's a latency period. Maybe it may take 5 years or 10 years or 11 years, but eventually people start to see the effects, and they start to get over it. They start to be upset with this. They start to be done with adopting these with dealing with the shortcomings of these institutions. I believe that this year, like no other, uh people's frustrations with the lack of privacy, the increased censorship, the increased exploitation of the data that they provide, then being weaponized against them to get them more addicted to whatever platform it is that's hoarding their data. People are over that. Like nobody wants to deal with that anymore, and we don't have to. We have the infrastructure needed in order to build their replacements. Centralization isn't going to go anywhere. There's always a place for centralization, because it's not a it's apples and oranges, right? You're comparing apples and oranges. The issue is when you get rid of one. When the issue is when everybody's forced to eat oranges, regardless of whatever allergies they may have, whatever affinity they may have to apples. you know Leaving that analogy, but if you get what I'm trying to say, the issue is that there's too much centralization to the point where it's become too tempting to abuse these platforms. So I don't know. I think we're, as a collective, I feel like the hive mind that is the human species is kind of tired of it. Like nobody wants to keep hearing about how OpenAI is making billions of dollars using the data that we provided them. We would much rather be able to use that value in order to train our own AIs that we have custody over, so that it can become a tool for productivity, which, if you recall, the way to wealth is productivity. They're stripping our ability to profit from that productivity of the AI that we train. And I say no more. I say we don't have to. And I think within 5 years, the paradigm shift will have we will have reached an inflection point that's yet to come, and we'll know it. We'll know it when we see it, but we're getting there.
Can I say something to that? Because I found that very interesting, Jesse. I completely agree, right? I think that in a true capitalism, if my shop is not being nice to customers, then someone will open a shop next to it, right? But that always begs the question, how much does it cost to open a shop next to me, right? If it's in a small town somewhere, that will happen. But if it's in the middle of New York, could be harder. And the same thing happens with technology, right? When a company like YouTube starts abusing us, or Facebook, the natural outcome we would expect is that we would have 10 competitors by now. But who really has pockets that are deep enough to compete with such a company, right? It's no coincidence that there is no alternative to YouTube by now. I mean, it's a bot-riddled mess. The whole comment area of every channel now is just scams and fake comments, and no competitor. This has been happening for 10 years and nothing happens. And I think the capital is a huge thing there, right? It's not just about having an idea to create a new YouTube. It's also, do you have a few billion to just throw at something like that? And I think solutions like Personal DAO and what we're doing at Solutio and many other efforts, right, are bridging that gap so that the community can actually have the power to compete with these companies. And I think that's super important for us to actually see these new solutions emerging.
There's probably comments on these YouTube videos that are like, yeah, this is great, but have you heard of FTC 73469? FTC 73469 is going to the moon. Like 40 comments underneath a YouTube video. How many times do you see that? And I think Darren and I talk about this all the time. I mean, there's so many points to take from it where it's like, apples and oranges. What if you have an allergy to the oranges? And it's like, even just sitting on X all day. How many people do you think are just on X for like 8 or 9 hours a day, and just like how unhealthy that is? It's crazy unhealthy. So
I'm going back to a flip phone, man. I got a business phone. I'll keep that one as a smartphone, but my personal line, like, I'm aware of it. I'm aware that, hey, they make these products addictive. I'm aware that, I probably shouldn't be using it at 9 o'clock before I, go to bed or something like that, or at, 7 o'clock when I wake up. So I I do my best, and they still get me, and I'm somebody who's more aware of it. So yeah, it's getting out of hand. I think and it's become obvious. X is like the best option we have right now. As far as like uh avoiding being censored. But that's the only leg up that X has. They're still using our data to train Grok. Elon Musk has made zero plans to decentralize that AI. So, you may trust him, but eventually he'll be gone. And the next person who comes behind him, will you trust that person as much? Probably not. And even if you do, then the next person and the next person, eventually at some point, we encounter a person not worthy of the trust and responsibility that they hold. So to avoid that, decentralize.
100%. I know we've got about 20 minutes left. I kind of wanted to run through some milestones that you guys have all had and any kind of forward-looking statements. And I know, Scott, you were sharing screen. So if you want to walk us through this a little bit, that'd be really cool as we kind of get kicked off. And then we'll go to Kyle, because I know, Kyle, you're helping us to host, but you guys have some really interesting stuff going on with Swap. And let's go to Scott first, though. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Love to show the alpha. This is not live. This is going to be coming out in a soft launch in a few weeks. And then at Bitcoin 2024, we have a lot of plans to do a lot here. But this is just an example of what the internet computer enables. We built this over the last, 6 months, and the fact that we can have our own wallet, that's both a Bitcoin wallet and an ICP wallet, that enables us. These are inscriptions. These are Bitcoin ordinals. This one is for sale right now, but you can look into my wallet right now. Take another one. We got the Go to Gamer. Shout out Swap. list for sale. I'll put some 005 BTZ 0005 confirm listing. You can't do this on chain Bitcoin. Every Bitcoin transaction has a fee, and it takes 10 minutes, right? So we go back to Explore. I hope, demos are always hard, but instantly, I guess the devs need a little bit more time, but instantly it shows up for sale now. So a user can come on here and pay their 0005 CKBTC, which is kind of like a wrapped Bitcoin equivalent on the IC, and buy their first artwork or buy this Bitcoin ordinal for investment. This artwork in particular is one of the 222 artists that were on the moon. We call this the Bitbasel Moonrider. And just showing ease of use again, connect to Gmail. That's awesome, instead of having to set up. This is also very protected. It's multi-party computation. So we are not storing your keys, but we are able to do a Gmail login, not storing any data. And just kind of wanted to show that and show kind of the cool tech, on the back end, it's super advanced, cutting edge, but on the front end, I don't know, but maybe my grandma could use it. And that's always the goal.
Yeah. And I mean, we talk about patchwork of interoperability. I mean, this is kind of being able to interact with things kind of seamlessly, where like, it's always interesting thinking about like the user experience. And we all talk about, why don't we have mass adoption yet? And, I have to have 40 different passwords and 40 different wallets and 40 different ecosystems and 40 different communities. And that's a small inkling of it. I mean, for those of us here that are like trying to work in this space and also engage with the tech, it's like, how many NFTs does everybody have? And do you keep up with all of the different Discord channels to make sure that you're not missing out on stuff? It's impossible. But Kyle, I know that you guys have a lot of milestones as well. I don't know how much you guys can really publicly share with some of the stuff that we've talked about, but I would love to kind of hear anything from your end.
Yeah. So I won't share too much, but like the swap, obviously recently we did the ICPCC. I was the MC of that. And we had a lot of new members around our team for the production and the event organization as well. So I think, in the coming weeks, maybe months, you'll start to see more evolving of that. And the swap will still be a contributor of that, but there'll likely be something new announced, and we'll kind of have to go from there. But basically, we want to wrap into more experiences going into Web3 and highlighting a lot more. So it's kind of like what the events that we've been doing, right? We've done a lot of spaces and so on. We're going to take a bit of that, get more involved with highlighting awesome experiences in Web3. So kind of more of like an event series, if you want to call it that. We prefer experiences. And yeah, so we're going to be going around and really helping and pushing the space forward through specific like B2B campaigns. And I should be at Bitcoin Nashville as well. Looking forward to meeting people there. Been helping out with some things around with like the ICP ecosystem for Bitcoin Nashville specifically. So I do know that there's going to be a big movement to get a lot of our ecosystem out there. So community members should kind of get more involved with that. I do know that Definity Foundation has a big booth there, and that there's going to be some events circulating around that. So keep your eyes out for a lot of additional marketing as far as like the event and kind of like getting CKBTC more involved in the ecosystem. So I think that's going to be a big amplifier this summer. But yeah, I'll leave it at that.
No more alpha on the side for some of the other stuff you guys have going on, but it's really going to be cool. I mean, I think, one thing that we do see all the time is these, gigantic conventions, and I think they're great. I think physical events are insanely important, but it's kind of similar to like what we see across like X spaces, at least in my opinion, where like you see so many X spaces at once, and it's like, where's the target here? Like how can we target? Like if you've got a physical event and you've got 80 different booths, it's like and 40 different speeches going on at once. I think that what you guys are kind of doing behind the scenes is going to be really cool to watch, for some actual targeted initiatives that are going on across the board. Jesse from Personal DAO, would love to kind of hear any milestones that you guys have had recently, or you know, kind of what you're looking forward to within IC or the wider Web3 space.
Yeah, so right now we're in pre-alpha phase, and that's coming to an end pretty soon. I have about 8 tasks that I have to complete before we can actually officially enter the alpha phase of Personal DAO. And what that'll look like is, let me see. I think I could. Let me see if I can share my screen. It's looking like too much work right now. Entire screen. Okay, I wanted to give you all a visual. Can you all see?
I can see now. It's
Okay.
we're sharing.
Okay, perfect. So this is, you know, pre-alpha development, so there's still some bugs and stuff that I'm working on, so don't be too critical. But I just wanted to show this so that I can give you all a visual. A lot of things are easier to understand when they're accompanied with an actual visual. So what I have here, 2 separate links, and each one of these, they pretty much look identical. If you click back and forth, you can't even tell that I'm clicking. But these are 2 totally separate personal DAOs, and each one has its own data set. I'll log in. I'll log in and show you. Each one has its own data set, its own user base, its own. Here we go. This one is logged in already. So this is what it looks like after you log in. Very minimal upfront. Just 3 tabs, one for the dashboard where the DAO is managed, and you get some, you know, some metadata regarding like your canister IDs for the DAO's canister IDs, the DAO's computational resources that it holds, how much is burned in the last day, what's the current release version, and then any active and inactive proposals that have been submitted. So, you know, that's the dashboard. The treasury, the magic here is the ability to stake and fractionalize neurons. So this treasury allows for people to create neurons, users of this DAO, to create neurons that are owned by this DAO, that they collectively own. Their voting power over this DAO is directly proportional to how much they've contributed to the neurons. So you get to actually submit and create a proposal to say, hey, I want to create a neuron. I don't have any ICP in there right now, but I would have you know, stated how much ICP I want to allocate to that new neuron, and then upon completion of that, the proposal would have gone to the dashboard, where you would have then been able to see it in the active proposal and vote on it. And then this section is your private wallet. So this, you know, the tokens that rest here, they're under your custody. And this is how you interact with the treasury. So when you deposit to the treasury, or interact, or when you deposit to the treasury or withdraw from the treasury, it comes from this private wallet. And so this is very minimal. It's the absolute minimum viable product, which is necessary in order to begin seeding these different communities. I'll stop sharing now. Stop screen. Okay. It's the absolute minimum viable product that that different communities within the ICP ecosystem will need in order to begin establishing a governance structure amongst themselves. So pre-launch, the task that I'm focusing on is just bugs that I identified in the application that I need to resolve, and then just some different ways to optimize and enhance the way that data is stored and making it more resilient. Immediately after the launch, so once we enter alpha, the next step is to make it so that those fractionalized neurons can then be used as collateral to secure liquid ICP. So that now people who have staked ICP within this shared DAO, they can now say, hey, I have 10, 20, $30,000 worth of value here. They are producing me rewards every day. It's locked for 8 years, but hey, would you be willing to give me loan me liquid ICP and I put this up as collateral. And they still maintain custody or ownership rights, rather, of their neuron stake. So that means their rewards are being used to service the loans that they just received. So that's the immediate next step. I estimate that'll be ready somewhere around October, September, October. And then after that, the next step is to add Bitcoin and Ethereum and USDC to the protocol, so that people can, in addition to putting up their neuron stake as collateral, they also get to put up their Bitcoin, their Ethereum as collateral in order to secure loans and other cryptocurrencies. And then, from there, we'll take on a more community-driven approach to, what features we go ahead and add. But that's the alpha.
Dude, it's a ton of work. I mean, kudos on all the work, man. That's awesome. And really appreciate you sharing it with us today. And then finally, we'll round it out here with the Solutio guys, Juan and Eric. If you guys want to walk us through any milestones, what you're excited about, and yeah.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Our roadmap is available in a Google Sheet webpage. So in brief summary, we started with the development of solution in February. We've been granted by the Definity's grant program. So we've been 2 months build the backend of solution basically. And on the first days of May, we started building the front end. We've been the last time building the front end. And now we are in the early days of solution. We are launching, not even in a week. I think it's on the 15th. We are launching, and for these first couple of days, we are giving the platform for a selective group of users to test it out and check how is it. Then for the future, when we finally launch the solution, which we've been waiting for a long time, we are probably gonna, sit with Eric with a long cup of coffee and start to discuss the new features for solution. We have the biggest one we already have planned, but we really wanna hear the community. We wanna hear the community, the feedback, the features they want, right? Because we are building solution for the community, and we want solutions to be built by the community as well. So yeah, we want to hear them, their feedback, also fix any bugs. We are hoping that bugs appear so we can improve our platform. And after we have that beta plan, we are going to start building that beta, the next version of solution. And I don't want to get the date wrong, but I think over the September, like the 15th of September, something like that, we are going to launch the new version of solution. This is going to be the bigger one, the most complete one, and this is the one that should be more open to the public, right? Like, so our initial plan is basically to target the ICP community and friends and family and stuff. But on the beta version, we are aiming at a more larger number of users. I know if Eric, you want to addition anything to that?
Yeah, the beta version is when we want to expand outside of ICP, right? Solution works really well for any form of open source. So we are hoping to onboard other blockchain communities and hopefully also people from the Linux communities. I think it would be really great if every time I have a bug on or hardware that isn't working on my Linux machine, I can open an ID on Solutio and pledge a few dollars for someone to fix that. And if enough people are using the same camera as I do, it gets enough pledges and gets fixed, right? Like Juan said, we have big features planned for the beta, which also makes us very interested in what Personal DAO is building. In the future, it would be, we want to not only allow users to pledge for ideas they want to build, but for them to actually own the ideas that get built proportionate to what they contributed, right? If we do that using something like Personal DAO, or honestly, we don't know yet what solution we're going to use, but we're going to go in that direction that the users have ownership of the things that they are building. Right now, I think another big effort that we're doing is Solutio can also be used for things that are not coding, right? So, for example, if 10 developers need to share costs for content creation, for example, they could start an idea on Solutio, everyone pledges a bit, and we can create content for the ICP community or for DeFi or, projects that share some interest or a similar market. To keep the costs a bit lower for each individual project, but more profits for content creators and people who spread the word, right? So we started this community this week in our Discord, and we are inviting every builder on ICP or beyond. If you have a great project, if you're looking to reach more people, if you want to share costs of content creation with other builders, join our Discord. There's lots of space for ideas. We're just waiting for you.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to give a huge shout out again to Kyle from the Swap for inviting all you gentlemen. I will make sure that I give all you guys a follow from my account in Genfinity's, because I would love to have the opportunity to bring all of you guys on again. I told you guys it was going to be a little bit of the Wild West here. It's kind of the first second X Live we've done, and this is definitely the one we've done with the most people. But Jesse from Personal DAO, I know this is the second or third time we've had the opportunity to talk. It's always a pleasure here, and you keep killing it, dude. Love your ethos and mindset in the space. Juan and Eric from Solutio, Scott from BitBasil, and Kyle from the Swap. Thank you guys so much for joining today, and we'll get moving into our next segment here and see you guys again next time.
See y'all later. I appreciate you having me.
Thank you very much for having us.
So much.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your time.
Peace.
We're gonna pivot here into the next segment, guys, and this is again a first for us, kind of doing 2 segments back to back. So excited to have Brady up here to tell us a little bit about borrowing and lending on the Hedera network through Bonzo. Brady is an OG within the Hedera ecosystem, coming from the marketing aspects and angle within Hedera, and kind of starting out an open source non-custodial lending and borrowing protocol that is built on Hedera as well. So give us a second here as we transition into this next segment, and we will go from there. All right. Let's do a mic check real quick, Brady, because I know this is we're still navigating the Wild West of these X Lives, by the way. So you've got number 2 here for us.
Yeah, no doubt. No, it feels like you guys are doing a great job. Better than what we were doing on video spaces when we first tried to do that. We had a bunch of issues there with those. So
100%. Well, I would love if you could maybe just give an intro of yourself. And again, this is so weird because we've done like a couple hundred X spaces audio wise, and it's like, hey, Brady, I've talked to you on video before, but can you intro yourself to the audience here? But yeah, I would love if you can give an intro of yourself, background, and then what you're doing. Just a little bit of an overview with Bonzo, and then we'll dig into the weeds here.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Brady Gentile. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Bonzo Finance Labs. Bonzo Finance Labs is a development shop that's contributing to the creation of Bonzo Finance. It is a open source non-custodial lending and borrowing protocol that is based on Aave v2, the most utilized lending and borrowing protocol on Ethereum and a few other networks, but adapted to Hedera's Ethereum virtual machine and native token service. And we're live on testnet right now and looking to go live on mainnet by Q3 2024. And then a bit of background on myself too. I previously was working at the Hedera Layer 1 network organization, and then Swirlds Labs, which is the product marketing and engineering arm for the Hedera network. Departed from there after being there for about 5.5 years in January of this year, and started down on this adventure of building Bonzo Finance. We've got a team of 5 folks that are involved so far, and looking to grow that out over the next year or 2.
Awesome. Darren, we can shotgun this one back and forth because I mean, I'm sure, Brady, if you want to share screen and go through some stuff that you want to go through, we can do that as well. I would love maybe to kick off here, just if you could maybe inform the audience here of kind of the I've been using the word evolution a lot recently. I've got to find a different word. The evolution of the Hedera network, as far as the tooling and the things that you can do within the ecosystem, because I know tons has changed over the past couple of years.
Yeah, no doubt, especially the past couple of years in particular. You know, when Hedera launched initially, it was so focused around enterprise type use cases, and that was back in 2017, 2018. You know, obviously there's the Hedera Governing Council, which is a ton of large organizations that are helping govern the network. So folks like Google and Ubisoft and Shinhan Bank and LG, and there's 29 organizations in total. They're operating node infrastructure and they're building use cases on the network. I think in particular over the last 2 to 3 years, you know, there's been a shift in terms of the type of use case that's being addressed, and it's leaning more into native Web3 and retail focused applications. And why I think this is good, although a little bit different than what we've seen in the rest of the market, is that in starting out focusing on enterprises, the Hedera network, the way that it's been architected and engineered, was heavily focused on scalability, zero downtime, performance, security. They're really building out a public network that is meant to be enterprise grade. The thing is that enterprises, I think, aren't exactly ready to fully adopt this technology yet, especially when it comes to public networks. And, you know, we saw this also with like public cloud when that first came around. And so the positive thing is that over the last 3 years, as it shifted towards retail and sort of Web3 innovation type applications, although they had gotten a late start, the foundation that's been laid in terms of the network is incredible. We don't see downtime. It's incredibly performant. The experience for retail users is quite impressive. And so while they are playing catch up, anytime someone joins the network and starts participating in these Web3 ecosystems that are being built, it's a fantastic experience with high retention. And you know, the goal now is to really build out these ecosystems and attract you know, retail audiences and users to come join us.
So for the people that are kind of beginners with DeFi, how does the loan process work? I have to over collateralize a loan by how much? How do I went onto Aave and it's HBAR is not listed directly. So how do you even use it if you want to?
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, so I'll take a step back here and just look at the DeFi ecosystem on Hedera for a second. So when you look at ecosystems for DeFi and other networks, there's typically an order of operations that takes place in terms of the category of DeFi application that comes online. So over the last couple of years, the foundation for DeFi has been laid through the development of decentralized exchanges, which allow for token-based applications to thrive, the ability to swap tokens, the creation of sufficient liquidity, trading volume, total value lock, things like that. And then in addition to that, and kind of tangential, is Stater Labs, which is doing a liquid staking token of HBAR. So that's been laid, and now there is the next phase of DeFi, which is lending and borrowing. So when you look at sort of again, that order of operations on other DeFi ecosystems, it's DEXs, and then lending and borrowing comes online. And so we're trying to fill that gap for that second phase of DeFi. And you know, in terms of the functionality of Bonzo Finance, Aave is an open source code base, and you know, anybody that is you know, trying to operate on top of an EVM network, they can take Aave's open source code, adapt it to the network that they're trying to port it to, and build an application based on that. And so, you know, that's what we've done. That's what we've seen Spark recently do, which is MakerDAO. They took the Aave code base and they've deployed it, you know, under the MakerDAO organization. And so we're doing the same for Hedera, and we're adapting it to Hedera's EVM and native token service. And the way that Aave works in terms of lending and borrowing is it is a self-custody solution where you bring your crypto account and your assets to the protocol, you connect your wallet, you supply assets to the protocol in these asset pools, and those asset pools are shared by anybody who's participating and supplying to a specific asset. When you supply it to the pool, it is natively supplied as collateral, and it is an over collateralized loan. So you supply it, and then based on the asset that you're supplying and the risk analysis that was done on that asset based on its volatility, market cap, trading volume, things of that nature, you're able to take out a loan against a percentage of the value that was supplied. So it is over collateralized. And then when you go to borrow after supplying collateral, you can borrow against any of the supported assets that are available on the platform.
I just want to add one thing. A real world use case for this is, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago, I went to the hospital, and I was there for like months, so I didn't really get a chance to work. I could have took my crypto and borrowed against it, and then just made payments towards it and slowly got it back, and I wouldn't have a taxable event. Versus what I did do is just sell crypto to pay for stuff. So that's a really good use case.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of really good real world use cases there. We are going to support USDC on Hedera right off the bat. And so, right, with USDC as the loan that you're taking out, you could then take that to an exchange and get cash and do sort of, non-crypto real world transactions based on that. And then at a later time, come back and pay the loan off.
I was watching a video like a week ago, and it was like one of those things where you're like laying in bed at like 11 o'clock at night, just scrolling through shorts on YouTube. And some guy comes up and he's talking about, some guy comes up and he's talking about what wealthy people do, and wealthy people aren't necessarily in the business of selling their assets. They leverage their assets to acquire more assets. And I think that that's kind of an interesting thought process too. I'm not saying, I'm not saying borrow against your crypto and just start buying all sorts of crap willy-nilly. But at the end of the day, like, I think one of the things when I look at borrowing and lending and digital assets and kind of the natural progression of things, it certainly comes with a little bit of an education barrier too. So, I mean, from your guys' standpoint, shout out, by the way, to those in the Hedera community. I know that you've onboarded Renly to help out within Bonzo, which is really cool. And I've seen kind of some short form videos and stuff like that coming out recently, just to kind of get people in the education mode to like learn how to use what you guys are building. Can you maybe just touch base on that a little bit?
Yeah, education is so critical. As mentioned before, the DeFi ecosystem really started to kick off maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and it was very new. These types of transactions were very new to the users that were on Hedera, HBAR holders, and a lot of education was needed to be done for retail users that are in the existing ecosystem around decentralized exchanges. And I think now we're facing having to do that type of education again for lending and borrowing with those same users. And so we do have a heavy focus on, on the education front. I think, when it comes to different types of use cases, a couple key things that we're seeing in particular with lending protocols across other networks is we see heavy collateralization of the liquid staking token for that network. And the reason that is because when you're holding a liquid staking token, you're receiving an APY just for holding it. So if you're holding HBAR X, for example, through Stater Labs, you're receiving, I think, around a 4.6 APY. You can deposit HBAR-X into the Bonzo protocol, and you can take out a loan against that in any other asset that's supported. And by having that APY, you end up offsetting the APY that you would pay in interest for whatever other asset it is that you're borrowing. So we definitely see HBAR-X as probably a large contributor to TVL and an asset that many people are going to likely collateralize to take out loans. And then the other one is stable coins. So when you look at stablecoin TVL and utilization on these other lending protocols across different networks, stable coins are one of the highest TVLs, and then also the highest utilized as well. So because of the stable nature of stable coins, when you deposit them on Bonzo, their risk profile is so low. And so your essentially your loan to value ratio, how much you can borrow against when you've deposited a stable coin, is much higher. It's going to be around maybe 80% of the value that you've supplied you can borrow against. And so, those are like two key things that we anticipate happening upon the launch, just based on the research that we've done across other protocols in the space. I can dive into some example use cases for reasons to borrow also, if you're interested in that.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so one use case, and I guess the caveat I should have said at the beginning of this, not financial advice in any way. There's an extreme amount of risk that takes place when you're participating, particularly in lending and borrowing. But one use case that's a really sort of visual use case is the collateralization of any asset that you want to provide, and then the borrowing of the Karate Combat Token. And the reason I bring this up is because the utility of the Karate Combat Token is twofold. There's governance utility, where you can bring that asset into the Karate Combat application, and they allow you to vote on various rules that take place for the fights that they host. And then the second is you can actually use the Karate Token to participate in no-lose bets within the application. So you can bet on fighters and the outcome of fights, and then receive Karate tokens if you placed your bets correctly. And as these fights occur, we definitely see the possibility of folks coming in and wanting to maybe collateralize HBAR, HBAR-X, or another asset that we support, and pulling out Karate and boosting the utilization of the Karate application, and also participating in these no-lose bets and governance type activities.
So I'm curious, do you have peer-to-peer loans, or can I just borrow against any asset that has a liquidity pool token?
Yeah, so it's technically peer-to-peer, but it's pooled peer-to-peer. So each asset that's supported is a single liquidity pool for that asset. And anyone who supplies that asset to the protocol, it goes into that pool. And then anyone who borrows an asset from the protocol, it's coming from that pool. There are different lending protocols out there that are doing things like intents, and that's sort of a more direct peer-to-peer. You can essentially put up a specific asset and an amount of that asset and say, hey, I'm willing to lend this out at this APY. And that's another way of going about lending and borrowing. But in that instance, you need individuals on each side of the marketplace looking at that specific instance or that intent. And so for us, it's a little bit more flexible because it is a single pool.
Thanks. And I mean, like you mentioned some of the use cases, there's news with Archax, right? They're trying to tokenize equities and everything. So you just got to think about all the things that come onto the platform where borrowing and lending is going to be a cornerstone. Really, you need that to have functional markets. So, the sky's the limit.
Yeah, no doubt. And the way that, I'm starting to really think about what it is that we're providing to the ecosystem, we really have an opportunity to be a liquidity layer for the Hedera network, and particularly Hedera's DeFi ecosystem. There's the unique opportunity there to unlock liquidity that previously wasn't accessible to DeFi. And part of the reason for that is because when you supply assets to the protocol, unlike DEXs, there's no risk of impermanent loss because it's a single asset pool. And there's many treasuries of token-based projects and large holders of token-based projects that maybe have restrictions on what can be sold, but at the same time, both those treasuries and those holders do want exposure to other assets that are supported by on Hedera. And so, low-hanging fruit for us is chatting with folks that are at these different token-based projects and their leadership teams and saying, hey, let's talk about the idea of allocating a portion of treasury to Bonzo. It increases liquidity for your token-based project in the ecosystem. It allows folks to get more exposure to that asset, and also potentially earn some profit and reward for doing so.
Yeah, I think it's interesting when you think about tokenization of real world assets and kind of these platforms for borrowing and lending. I think it's kind of a little bit what Darren was alluding to right now. And you have these real world assets coming on chain or on the hash graph or things like that. How much more defragmented all of this stuff becomes. I mean, really for the first time, and people can buy and trade commodities and do all this other stuff and then kind of borrow against them and things like that. Obviously there's levels of compliance that come along with all of this stuff. Like, can you maybe, Brady, just from your standpoint, just talk about how you guys are tackling that right now and maybe where you see it going in the future as far as what type of things you may need to integrate into Bonzo over time, whether it's like the verifiable credentials and all the other stuff that probably starts playing a role maybe in a couple of years from now.
Yeah, no doubt. And good point made by Darren with regards to like tokenized assets, equities, things like that. Based on the current state of the market right now, RWAs feel still pretty early and less mature. But over the next 5 years, I anticipate that not only the amount of and the value of tokenized real world assets increasing, but also sort of just overall maturity of the market. And so, we're definitely thinking about in a future state being able to support that. We don't know exactly what that is going to look like yet. Like you said, there's likely more rules and regulations around real world assets. What we think is going to happen is today it's a lot of crypto-based assets and sort of native tokens and protocols. As an intermediary step, we're going to see permissionless RWAs. So there is already one on Hedera, probably a few, but the one that comes to mind is the Carrot fungible token, which is essentially that's issued by Diamond Standard, and that's a representation of real world diamonds that have been tokenized, that they have secure custody of, and they've issued tokens that are representative of that asset. And that's a permissionless token, so you can actually go and purchase that on Saucer Swap's DEX right now, and I think they're looking into listings for centralized exchanges as well. And from that perspective, that intermediary step in RWAs is something that we definitely want to support. And then when you look at the future state of RWAs, our goal is the space is changing constantly and very quickly, but our goal is to adapt to the market as time goes on. And so, there may be instances where, yes, RWAs are going to play they're obviously going to play a big role in lending and borrowing, and the configuration of that might look a little bit different than the sort of Wild West fully permissionless configuration today. So something like private pools or KYC pools, we don't know exactly what the architecture is going to look like for that, or what the regulation is going to require. But it's something that we're continuing to research, and we definitely want to support. And if you look at Aave, they've created Aave Arc, which is sort of a more enterprise private pool version of Aave, and that's something that they're continuing to progress on. I haven't seen a ton of traction with that yet, but the same mechanisms that are being used for lending and borrowing of crypto assets should be able also to be used for real world assets and more mature use cases. So that's my thinking on that.
Can you go over the difference between points and the Bonzo token? Where are they different? And just explain the use case of Bonzo.
Yeah, and just to confirm, you said points?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Yeah, so Bonzo will have a native token. So similar to Aave, there's the Aave token. Bonzo will have a Bonzo token, and it has two purposes of utility. The first is it is a governance token. So in the ideal future state for Bonzo, it operates as a DAO, and the DAO for Bonzo, we're looking to launch in early 2025. holders of the Bonzo token will be able to create proposals to help steer the direction of the protocol and also vote on those proposals that take place. And everything that we're doing leading up to that is about laying a foundation, although it is sort of a more centralized decision making that's taking place leading up to the DAO. We're following the processes that you would expect a DAO to follow, where if we are making a decision, we want to create a proposal for it. We're internally going to be voting on that proposal, and we're going to set up these processes so that by the time the DAO comes around, everything's going to be in place for token holders to sort of really start to steer the direction and take ownership over the protocol. The point system is an incentive system. So in our research looking at Camino and MarginFi in particular on Solana, one mechanism that they've employed to incentivize utilization of the protocol, boost TVL for the protocol of people supplying assets, and then also people borrowing assets, is points mechanisms. And so points mechanisms essentially run in seasons. We're looking to do 3 seasons of points that run around 6 months each. At the end of each season, based on the points that you've accumulated, there's an airdrop reward that is provided to people who have accumulated points. In order to get those points, it's about participation of using the protocol itself. So supplying assets, and then based on the value of the assets supplied, as well as borrowing assets and the value and the length of time as well. The unique thing about the point system is when you look at these other protocols that are launching point systems, they're using databases, and it really goes against kind of the ethos of Web3 because databases are quite, centralized. They can change the points for any account that they want. It's not transparent. It's not immutable. What we've done is there is a HCS 20 point standard on the Hedera network, and what that is Hedera has a unique capability called Hedera Consensus Service to allow for the high throughput writing of data to the network. And every piece of data that's written to it is immutable, verifiable, consensus time stamped, and it's very inexpensive to do that. You can do that at 10,000 transactions a second. And so our point system is using this HCS 20 standard and taking advantage of the Hedera Consensus Service to make points more along the lines of the Web3 ethos. And we also hope that inspires other projects too. Projects even beyond Hedera can utilize this point system and the HCS 20 standard.
So it's not exactly a token, but it sort of is because Hedera supports it.
Yeah, it's definitely not a token. There's no sort of ability to transfer points per se. It really is about using the Hedera ledger as a immutable, verifiable, and timestamp database. And the data model for that, to get a little bit into the weeds here, it's similar to Kafka. Kafka is essentially a streaming database service that uses a data model of topics and messages. And so when you utilize the Hedera Consensus Service, it's the same model of topics and then messages that are sent to that topic.
So like auditable timestamps.
Yeah, with some data, with a little bit of data in there. That's right.
Clever way to work the network.
Sorry, I missed that.
I just said it's a clever way to use the network.
Yeah, it really is. And that's one of the things that I love about the Hedera ecosystem is, although yes, it's these large organizations that are doing governance, the direction and the technologies and standards and everything that's being formulated on Hedera is being fully driven by the ecosystem of developers and projects. And so using Hedera improvement proposals, we've just seen tons of proposals that have come through that create really innovative and unique standards like this point standard that we're excited to use. And some of the other ones are music related NFT metadata, and that just went live recently. The ecosystem continues to innovate really hard, and it's been awesome to see.
I'm curious, Brady, And I don't know, I would love if you could maybe share a screen if you want to share a screen. If not, we can maybe just walk through some of the site and you can maybe touch base on anything. I know that right now you guys have, obviously not financial advice, but you guys have the I&O aspects next week. What does that kind of represent for you guys? I think in collaboration with Headstarter, you guys are giving away, I think it's an ocean and a desert NFT. So I would love if you can maybe walk us through what those are. And if you want to share a screen, feel free. And if not, I can maybe just share as you're kind of walking through some of this stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I think if you could share the main website, that would be awesome. I just don't want to mess with on the tech side of things if I break something and just the whole thing goes down.
Yeah, you're fine.
Awesome. So yeah, so we are doing a NFT collectibles sale, and that's taking place on June 17th at 10 a.m. Eastern time. There are 3 primary NFTs that can be purchased for this NFT collectible sale. And again, to reiterate, not financial advice. We partnered with In a Maze, which is he's a artist that's in the Hedera ecosystem. He's an Emmy award-winning illustrator, and he hand illustrated and then digitized each of the NFTs that you see here, and he just does incredible work. And so props to him for on the design front. The utility for these NFTs is that you first is a community-centric utility, so dedicated role in Discord, access to a specific channel in the Discord that also has a Bonzo token faucet, which is something that we saw Saucer Swap do and really like that idea. So we want to give NFT holders the ability to do that. The second utility for the NFT is a points multiplier. So based on the tier of NFT that you purchase, there is a 1.1x, 1.2x, and 1.3x multiplier for points. So if you're holding the NFT in your wallet and engaging the protocol, you'll get a multiplier on those points. If you collect all 3 NFTs, a snapshot's going to be taken after the end of the sale, and the holders of all 3 will receive a 4th Singularity NFT, and the art for that is amazing, and we're actually launching that tomorrow, so definitely be on the lookout for that, the art for the 4th NFT there. But if you're holding the 4th one, that's a 1.5x multiplier on points. And then holders of the NFTs also receive Bonzo tokens as well if you're holding that.
Awesome. And I mean, as far as the testnet is concerned, I know that you guys have that kind of rolled out right now too. I should have probably loaded up like a dummy wallet here to connect and go through all of that. But would love if you could maybe just walk through what some of the experience is right now, what people can do on testnet, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're running a campaign right now where if you jump into our Discord, there's a pinned message in our announcements channel with full instructions on how to do this. But essentially, you set up a testnet account in your Hashpack wallet. You connect that Hashpack wallet to this dashboard. You go back into the Discord, there's a faucet for testnet HTS assets that you can get. So you receive those in your testnet account in Hashpack, supply assets to the protocol, borrow assets against the assets that you supplied, take a screenshot, post it on X, and drop that post back into the Discord, and you'll receive an allow list spot for the NFT sale that's taking place. Essentially, and yeah, some details on that are in the under get started Bonzo testnet. Are specific instructions there on the left side that sort of walks through the process of participating. And
did I miss it here, or am I on the wrong page?
No, that's the right page. It's on the left towards the top. So
okay.
Under get started there. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Cool. No, it's awesome. I mean, I'm curious from your stance, like when we look at like an ecosystem like Hedera, what else exists out there right now? I think that there might be like one other protocol for borrowing and lending. I mean, would you expect over time, obviously, to see more of these types of initiatives coming out in Hedera? based on what we've seen in Ethereum, things like that. Like I can remember, I guess 2020, we really started to see a ton of these different types of things sprouting out in like Ethereum, and then led into kind of Polygon and Matic and things like that. I would love if you could maybe walk us through where you see the ecosystem going as a whole.
Yeah, so there is one other lending and borrowing protocol that's about the same stage as we are right now, called Serial Finance, and I think they're based on Compound. They're doing great work. Also, there's definitely room in the market for a number of different protocols to be successful. And then another protocol that's based on the Liquidity protocol that's on Ethereum, where it is technically lending and borrowing, but what it is collateralization of HBAR, and you receive a stable coin that's HBAR backed, that is a Swiss franc stable coin. And yeah, I think, in looking back at the order of operations for growth of a DeFi ecosystem, again, starts with DEXs, then you see lending and borrowing come online. I think there's going to be a few key winners in the lending and borrowing space that's on Hedera that really start to take off. This is similar to what we've seen with DEXs, and Saucer Swap has really sort of led the way. But then lending and borrowing really lays an amazing foundation for the next phase of DeFi, things like perpetuals and futures and derivatives and staking and yield aggregation and multipliers. And as you start to grow out the DeFi ecosystem with these new capabilities, there are stronger network effects that take place because of the interoperability of the assets that are the types of financial transactions that you're able to perform, and the assets that are received as part of partaking in those activities, like liquid staking tokens, like debt tokens, or liquidity tokens. So I definitely think that this is like the next step, and then that's going to lay a foundation for the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And the hope is that this acceleration continues, and there's more and more functionalities for retail participants to participate in.
Most people don't realize that the foundation is completely changing. The traditional markets, they're buys and sells. But when you have DEXs and liquidity pools, you can seamlessly make integrations, right? It doesn't even necessarily have to be financial transactions. If one network's speaking to another network, you need that seamless transaction to occur. So I'm curious to see how everything plays out, and if that model is a better model than order book model. So it's interesting to me.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think to that point, when you talk about interoperability and cross-chain, recently the HBAR Foundation announced an integration with Axelar, which is a cross-chain messaging platform that operates, is the underlying infrastructure for bridges. So that's one thing that I don't think Hedera has had a ton of exposure to. There's one bridge that interconnects Hedera with some other EVM networks called Hashport, and they've been doing a decent job, but I think you can't really have too many bridges. And when that starts to come online, it creates just greater opportunity for liquidity to be siphoned from these other networks onto Hedera. Ideally that times up with still having a significant amount of incentives and rewards to entice retail users from other networks to come over to the Hedera network. And then ideally, once they're over here, and yes, they initially came over for various incentives, but as they start using the network and enjoying the user experience of these different protocols and the Hashpack and Kabila native ecosystem wallets, and just how fast everything is, they stay retained as a user on the Hedera network. And so, when you look at like the inflows and outflows across networks, particularly Solana, significant amount of liquidity being siphoned from Ethereum onto the Solana network, and that's really what's helping them become such a powerhouse in the space. And I think that's truly one of the only ways that Hedera can can boost TVL and net new adoption, is we have to go cross chain. And so really excited about the things that are coming online with regards to Axelar and other cross-chain messaging protocols.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to watch, and just kind of a sidebar question, but I mean, I'm curious what your thoughts are, Brady. I mean, over time, I know that a lot of right now it's like, how do if you look at these ecosystems, it's like, how do we get the main, the token that's or the coin that's driving these ecosystems to as many centralized exchanges as possible? Do you think over time that shifts into kind of a network of networks type effect as far as DeFi is concerned, where it doesn't become as much about these centralized exchanges, but a lot of this stuff just moves directly on chain for DeFi?
Yeah, I think if I'm understanding what you're saying, sort of less about centralized exchanges and more about DeFi, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, the market thesis that I have, which could be totally wrong, is that we will see centralized exchanges go away. That's it's just not something I think that we really need. It creates ample risk, I think, relative to decentralized exchanges that exist, and we'll see greater maturity of decentralized exchange protocols, over time. But I would anticipate, maybe like Coinbase or Robinhood, they would integrate these protocols into their user experiences, and instead of using an order book, that's centralized on those platforms, you would be interfacing with Uniswap on the back end, or Bonza, or whatever protocol flavor you want to participate in. And so, I mean, I definitely think that's the future end state. And like, even when you look at Coinbase's S1, they specifically cite in their risk section when they went public, they're like, yeah, centralized exchanges are probably gonna go out the door. It's decentralized exchanges are the future, and they cite that as a potential risk, given at that time that exchange was their primary source of revenue. They've got many more now with Base and all the custody that they've done for, I think, like 13 out of the 17 Bitcoin ETFs and other things now. But it's definitely, I think, acknowledged as a future state.
Yeah, and like the DEXs can be completely compliant. They probably could be more compliant than centralized exchanges, because they just take the Treasury or OFAC to issue a list of sanctioned wallets, and have some type of oracle that comes back and says this is blacklisted. So I know they were using that for an excuse for a while, but to me, it seems like it's a better solution.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah,
Like the ethos of crypto, being able to transact without the need for an intermediary, and just trusting the technology and trusting math, and yet we're still going through the centralized exchange route, and it's like God only knows what's going on within the some of those centralized exchanges. So it'll be interesting to watch this stuff actually occurring kind of more and more on chain. Brady, I don't want to think that we missed anything here, but if we missed anything, I do know that you guys are doing some of the aspects of the launch with Headstarter, so I want to give Headstarter a shout out. Those guys have a great platform in the Hedera ecosystem for all these launches. And again, to preface, make sure you guys are going out there and researching all the stuff that goes on. Really fascinating to kind of watch the network on Hedera kind of grow and expand over time. And now we're kind of seeing, like you said, this order of operations as far as DeFi is concerned, and looking forward to all the initiatives. So if you want to maybe walk us out here with any forward-looking statements, or if we missed anything, correct us and talk about what we missed, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, no doubt. I think the only thing is just kind of reiterating kind of the vision and mission of Bonzo, where our goal is to contribute to the health and acceleration of DeFi on Hedera, and in particular this next stage of DeFi for Hedera. And so if you believe in Bonzo, you believe in the future state of DeFi on Hedera, and everything that we're doing is data driven. The contributions that we hope to make are around TVL, daily active users, stablecoin liquidity and utilization, and then trading volume that we see on DEXs. We'll make a direct impact there, but based on the types of things you can do with it, that's what we anticipate seeing. And yeah, we're really excited to execute on this. And then, yeah, final thing is the NFT sale. You know, definitely do your research on it, not financial advice, but that's taking place on June 17th at 10:30 a.m. Check out our Discord to get instructions on that. It's at bonzo.finance/Discord. And we're always available to help answer any questions that you have about DeFi in general, Bonzo Finance, lending and borrowing, Hedera, whatever you need, just please feel free to reach out.
Awesome. I want to give a huge shout out to our first panel that was on today, Personal DAO, BitBasil, Solutio, Fairtail, the Swap, and Kyle. So all the guys from the IC ecosystem, and even tie overs into Bitcoin ordinals and all that cool stuff. And it's always a pleasure to talk to you too, Brady. Good luck on everything with Bonzo coming out of the Hedera ecosystem, lending and borrowing, and kind of the evolution of DeFi. Also a shout out to Darren for helping us today. As always, amazing questions. I could not do some of these more traditional merges with decentralized financial type interviews because I would be lost at the end of the day. So awesome to be able to talk to you guys. And thank you so much, Brady, for your time today, and looking forward to the next one. Hang out with us for a second so we can make sure that this stream uploads. And if you guys are watching, drop some comments down if you like us doing these videos. I think we're going to keep trying to do them. So thank you guys so much.
Appreciate your time,
Thanks so
Brady.
much. Absolutely. Thank you guys.
Thanks.